are wonderful.
Well, that's a nice thing to say. I appreciate that. We got a $21,000 check from Kermit today,
Very nice. That's a good way to start the day.
which goes into the general fund.
Perfect.
So,
Set the phaser on stun. Busy day today, man.
yeah, me too. I ended
was
up
it one?
painting woodwork. Is that thing on you?
Yes. Is Walter in this afternoon until?
Walter is
Yeah,
not
we-
left. Did you need to address something?
I just had a quick question for him. I'll check in with him later. It's not urgent.
Yeah, he's gone for today.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get Kim in here so we can.
We don't have to do that today.
This is for the next meeting, right?
Yep, don't want to see it.
Okay.
Where did it
Mm-hmm. I'm going to make some notes. Kim's going to take official minutes?
Yes, I think
She
she is.
is, yes.
Okay, good.
She'll be here shortly.
And I'll just take some notes for me, myself, and I.
I have a notebook and I'm doing the very same.
Because sometimes I forget.
I should bring mine. I have the stylus. You write in it types. You should do
Okay.
that.
I have it, but my handwriting's horrible. I could have been a doctor with my handwriting, so I
Yeah, but
prefer
it
to
comes
type
out
it.
typed.
I understand, but it doesn't recognize my handwriting because I have the stylus also, and it thinks I'm writing in hieroglyphics.
Let's start the meeting, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dorr.
Everybody's present. The only item on the agenda is the charter revision discussion. As I've indicated, we need to reply in writing to the Charter Revision Committee by August 10th, which is next Friday, regarding the 4 charges that we gave them when they started the commission. I'll just reiterate those and we can discuss these individually.
Okay.
First one is, shall the town clerk be an appointed versus an elected position? Second charge was, shall the town remain guided by an elected board of selectmen, or should we move to a town manager's form of government? Third charge was, shall planning and zoning be combined into one board? And the last charge was, shall the number of members of the combined planning and zoning commission be increased from 5 members? So let's have an open discussion about this and get everybody's opinion. And if to some point we probably want to draft a memo. Either I can do that, or Tim can do it, or Kathy can do it.
Okay.
Once we agree on what we want to
So for
discuss.
sake of argument, could we do them in order of 1, 3, 4, 2? Let's do the
Whatever you want,
Let's
that's
do
fine.
Board of Selectmen one last,
Okay.
if that's all right with everybody. Because I think easiest one, should town clerk be appointed rather than elected? Based on what I read from what the commission stated, I tend to, my thing would be to tend to concur with what they wrote.
I also concur with what they've written.
I fully support the recommendation from the commission relative to the town clerk. I believe it should be appointed.
Okay.
So no changes to what they recommended, right?
No.
No changes.
The third item that you suggested we discuss next, Tim, was shall planning and zoning be combined into one board? And concurrent with that, if there was a combined planning and zoning, should that membership be increased from 5?
Yeah. Do you want to read in for the minutes what their recommendation was, or do you want to just summarize it?
Well, I
Probably okay to summarize it, right? Just to refresh our memory all,
Yes, I will do that. Excuse me.
if you don't mind.
The Commission extensively examined statutory mandates and historical operation of both the zoning board and the planning board, and it was unanimous in recommending maintenance of separate boards. So they basically said no. Your comments, Tim, then I'll address mine, and Kathy also.
like with many things, sometimes I forget why we suggested that they look at it. But my understanding was that we felt that as the town tries to mitigate the loss of state funding, we may need to do development more expediently in town, whether
Correct.
that's residential or commercial or whatever. And in conjunction with the master plan of development, we want to make it easier for people who want to come to town and build something that's in conformance, make it easier for them to get through there. And this was supposed to do that. So, you know, I obviously read what the commission put together. I kind of feel that we do need to combine the two for the original reasons we stated.
I did put my comments to both of you in writing, which I'll read. I feel this combination will speed up the approval process and encourage economic development, as you've indicated, Tim. Most municipalities in Connecticut, by a 3-to-1 margin, choose to have a combined planning and zoning commissions. For example, the towns of Enfield, Wellington, Totland, South Windsor, East Windsor, Windsor Locks, Stafford, Willington, etc. These towns have indicated that potential developers find it more favorable to deal with the surrounding communities who are a direct competition for economic development. Summers loses out because of an outdated process where developers go to places where it's easy to get work done. My objective as well as the Board of Selectmen is controlled economic development in order to mitigate the impact of future tax increases, as you discussed, Tim, necessitated by cutbacks of state aid, and I strongly feel and support a combined planning and zoning commission for those reasons. Kathy?
Before Kathy goes, can you just restate for me? You said controlled what development?
Controlled economic development.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thanks.
I support the recommendation from the Charter Commission not to combine the boards.
Okay.
I think it's something that's sort of like sacred to the people that not only serve on them but operate. If we had to have, maybe my feeling is if you wanted to speed up something for economic development, when you put people on the board or when you are about to see this happen, the folks who run the boards would probably we should try to get them to work together more and actually share a town vision. But at this point, I would support the Charter Revision recommendation.
Okay.
So, without creating additional planned development districts like we did for the mill, how do we ensure that a conforming development moves forward without unnecessary litigation, unnecessary delay on the part of the developer so don't lose their interest if we maintain the two boards?
I think one of the objectives here, to answer that, Tim, is that we've asked Planometrics to take a look at a complete review of the zoning regulations and also ways, based upon some of the comments in the PDD, to smooth that transition in terms of developers.
But
so I think he's going to address that when he comes back with his commission report, probably in September of this year.
But my question was more to Kathy because she had an opinion that was different than yours and mine.
Okay.
It is,
so, yeah. So, you know, my concern is, and I don't want to use the CVS example because that was just a mess. But suppose someone comes into town to develop something that's a conforming use. Let's say it's down at Geisler's Plaza. There's that one pad site that's still available on the front corner. If somebody comes into town with a plan to put something there that's conforming, I get the sense that the citizens can oppose it and the boards are easily swayed by that opposition, and the fact that it may or may not be conforming may get lost in those debates. And then there's the whole issue of, is it a planning issue or is it a zoning issue that seems to delay that well-meaning developer's goal of getting something built in time and impedes our ability to get the funding. So my question again is, how do we resolve those conflicts that have happened in the past between those boards? I don't know how we fix that without combining it.
well, I think it depends on the conversation that they have and I don't really know that there's a part of this that we can't really change because it never came up, and that is the length of time someone's in a position. And that, to me, is probably more problematic.
So the time, paying attention to when their terms expire, you mean?
Right.
And then valuing, so, okay, so,
So my problem is, we've allowed, so it's like, if it always was, it will always be. But in my mind, if you have a good planning board and they're managing things well, I've worked with them with planometrics when we were doing the plan of conservation and development. I like the way the board operates. I like the way they think and how they take it to heart. I have not been to as many zoning meetings, but I would leave them alone. Personally,
Okay.
I just want to leave them alone.
and I thought there's a third, I just remember there's like a third leg to the triangle. So we've got planning and zoning, and then we've got the town employees in the building office, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the appropriate chain of response when where an issue comes up with somebody in town that feels like a zoning permit isn't being followed, or the special use permits aren't being managed?
Oh, it'd be good.
Who
Jennifer.
owns that?
Well, Jennifer will always go to the zoning commission. So, for example, actually one just came up with Sunny's Place.
Okay.
So, Jen wanted the zoning commission to kind of be accountable for that because they issued it.
Yep.
And she's like, and because she's getting complaints and this, that, and the other thing, and she's like, okay, we got to get this under wraps. So she brought it to the zoning commission and said, hey, you guys got to put your rubber stamp on this because I'm getting this and this is coming from every which way. And so I can say that, okay, the zoning commission, this is what they decided. This is a special use permit. You have to abide by these. And then she can do her job and enforce those things. So that's kind of...
Have we ever had an instance where zoning and planning were kind of
Not that
saying
I'm aware
not
of.
it and trying to push it back across
No,
the desk?
I've never
Okay.
seen that.
No.
Yeah,
It goes from one to the other. But I would suggest, my feeling is, if you left them be to do their jobs, but maybe what's not and hasn't been done is to go through the roles and responsibilities, and that falls on us not to have asked for more of that, as to say, go through the charter, go through the folks that have to or report with them all the time to say, what are the roles and responsibilities, and have them work. Maybe it's like you go to a retreat somehow and you talk about, and you agree on the length of time that something should take before an approval.
Okay.
And all of those things, rather than upset the apple cart right now and put in two different boards.
Don't
or
you
one
feel,
board.
don't you feel, Kathy, that certain members of the planning commission are very knowledgeable about the zoning commission regulations and vice versa, in terms of understanding the inner working relationship between planning and zoning? So,
I don't know.
Are they boards or commissions planning?
commissions.
These commissions.
Are they boards or commissions planning? Is it planning board or planning commission?
The planning commission.
Same for zoning commission,
Yeah.
zoning board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, commission.
Just
I know.
sorry.
I got
I
ya.
really don't know. I would say
Do you want me to have Jen
I'm
come
sure they're
down
well
and she
versed.
can? No? Okay.
I've worked with the folks on planning more than on zoning, but I've been to a few zoning meetings.
You
If
sure?
it, and I think what they need, I think in the past there have probably been some times when this one particular engineer would come in and they relied on him instead of becoming more self-reliant. But I think that's what we owe them in return. Is I remember Dan Farrow going to school, and he is very level and knowledgeable, and so maybe that's in my mind. I'm not trying to convince you. I just want to stay
No.
this way, and I believe that it's just
Well, I guess
offering them the same opportunities that Dan Farrow had, and I think someone else took.
I guess the question is what you're saying. What benefit do we get out of combining those two?
I don't see much outside of you're looking at acceleration. The other way, you have more people involved in the town, but I don't know. I do think that we own some of the results, and that we should do something about it.
Yeah, I think I can support you based on that, Kathy. That if we hold people accountable to the terms, to their respective terms, and make sure that that's managed well, that's certainly a lot less disruptive than trying to combine them. Let's see if we can get it to work.
And also choosing the right commission members too. that basically maybe perhaps share our vision in terms of economic development, okay?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I'm always one to have good debate on both sides.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's important that we have people on these boards and commissions that are, legacy Summers people that understand how the town has been, countered by people who can help us take it forward. I don't want to blindly support a board that's going to let Main Street get leveled and Walmart come in.
And I support that. I think this kind of dialogue is important to get both sides of the argument, if you will.
Yeah.
So,
I'd swing to Kathy's side here and just say, let's leave it alone.
okay, let's make it unanimous then. We'll leave it.
Well, thank you.
Well, no, I think.
No, that's a persuasive.
No, I think
perspective,
you are
and
persuasive.
it's-
You know,
yeah.
it goes back to what benefit do we get by doing this? And based upon what you see, other than efficiencies, okay, you don't see a benefit.
No,
And
I don't.
efficiency's not known either. It's perceived efficiency. It doesn't.
Well, the only question I would have in rebuttal is why are one of the few towns in Connecticut that doesn't have a combined planning and zoning?
Tough being right when you're the only one, man.
Well, I think it goes back to the town basically wanting to have their involvement in terms of
Yeah.
these two commissions, so.
I don't have to look like every town, but I've always liked what they've done, and I just think we should support them. But I do think we owe it to them to do more. I think right now having the zoning regulations reviewed is a positive.
Yes.
Yep.
But we can't disregard these things and ignore them. We have to be there. We should be doing it for all the commissions that come to work for us. And I know I've met with, and you have too, with economic development, and they're off to a really great start. So maybe we owe some of that to these two boards.
I agree, and the work that has been done, man. I mean, I've lived in town now 30-some years. It's all been done well with well-meaning people. So I think you're right to upset that apple cart probably doesn't serve any of us well at this point, and especially given the work that the Charter Revision Commission did to make this recommendation. I don't want to take that lightly either. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're in unanimous agreement then. We'll accept the recommendation of the
Yeah,
Charter Commission
I'm
Committee.
making notes on an official motion we can make here toward the end, Kim, if that helps.
Oh, that'll be very helpful.
So the fourth charge is moot at this point because
It doesn't matter, right?
it doesn't matter.
Wait a minute, shall the number of members, oh, you're talking about
Well,
a
the
combined.
Planning and
Combined,
Zoning
so that's
Commission.
It's a moot point
increased.
if we
Yeah.
decide to not.
Yeah, I think the objective there is if we received unanimous approval in terms of combining planning and zoning, that we want to expand that number.
I
Make
got
sure
you.
we have additional people with expertise, so. Okay.
All right, so let's get to the elephant in the room. Should we be an elected board of selectmen or move to merge? And their recommendation was, Cliff Notes version, 5-member board of selectmen, right?
They recommended going to making the first selectman's position a part-time position
Yep.
while maintaining the title of chief executive officer.
Okay.
And then appointing an administrator, if you will, chief administrator, to run the day-to-day operations of the town. And lastly, to then to increase the amount of selectmen from 3 members to 5 members. Okay.
You want to start this time, Ann?
Sure.
Go right ahead. Because believe it or not, I have an opinion too.
I personally feel the structure recommended is extremely cumbersome, and it's going to be confusing as to what the reporting structure would be. And it's very difficult to take and be a part-time selectman and spend a lot of time out doing things in Hartford. That really, if you were ever to do something with a town administrator or manager, that's the person who needs those connections out there. I personally would prefer to just leave it as it is and not go to a charter revision with a town manager at this time. I don't think the town is ready for it, and the structure that was recommended is a little too difficult to comprehend.
I do have my comments, which I'll read, which I've sent to both of you. I feel the current structure of the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman works just fine. It's effective, productive, and efficient. I see no benefit in altering it with needless layering of the organization. It will complicate decision-making and results in inefficiencies and added expense and waste of time. The recommendation of a town administrator and increasing the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 members, if implemented, will result in an unworkable governance model. Simply put, it will add another organizational layer, add administrative cost, inefficiencies, and result, in my opinion, in dysfunctional execution of town government. The Chief Executive of the town is empowered to represent the town politically, administratively, legally, and financially. To bifurcate that the Chief Executive Officer's authority between a first selectman and an administrator will result in serious operational problems dealing with state agencies, banks, contractors, the public, etc. In addition, the town can ill afford to have a part-time first selectman chief executive officer who will now be faced with a substantial reduction in compensation, and I question if a competent and experienced executive would take this part-time position given the limitations and the parameters and the steep learning curve of the job. The administrator becomes, in my opinion, a toothless tiger without chief executive authority that will result in potential failure and overrule decisions. My other comment is that I feel the town employs competent and effective directors, which I said at the last public meeting, in a structure that permits them autonomy in running their respective departments. This allows the first selectman to concentrate on the substantive issues of the job, namely strategic planning, politics, interaction with state and local governments, grants, economic development, communication, public outreach, and financial. Since I've been in this position, I've been blessed with having competent directors who make my job easy. So I haven't had the ability to concentrate on these larger issues, these strategic issues. So I am not in favor of altering the current form of government.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of split the middle of that. I think the reason we asked the commission to take a look at this was for continuity at the chief executive level. So what I really like from the work they did is that I agree the town is not ready to be a town manager form of government, but I think having a chief administrator would work, provided that chief administrator is full-time, provided the chief administrator is also the CEO.
Which in effect you're talking about a town manager then.
Well, you are, but I would simply call it I would simply call it a chief administrator instead of a town manager. Now that said, the directors at town hall could all report to that chief administrator. I think very much like we do for the Board of Education, that chief administrator would be answerable to an elected Board of Selectmen, a 3-member Board of Selectmen, who then elects their own chairperson each time there's a change of that board. So if those 3 people ran for 2-year terms, their first meeting they'd get together and elect a chairman for that subsequent 2 years, and that would be the townspeople way to reach into the chief administrator. But
yeah, I think the concern was that the public would have a say in terms of the election, which I haven't agreed with. I've asked Kim, she's our operations manager. Kim, I'd like to have your comments too, since we basically...
I like Tim's idea.
In your idea, what you're saying is then that the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen would be setting policy, hiring, and firing.
Setting policy, hiring, and firing, very much like the folks at the Board of Ed do now. So those are the elected officials that go out and find the talented professional that we need as the real administrator, full-time.
So it kind of works like that now, because, obviously Bud's, he can't remove anybody, or we can't hire anybody without the board approval anyway.
Correct.
So that's
Or
kind of
signing
fits into
contracts or financial
the
decisions.
policy, the HR policy nicely. So,
But unlike what you just said about planning and zoning, the continuity is important because of the links that we need into the people that are running Hartford. With a 2-year rotation of this board, if we lose those opportunities to pursue grants and pursue other state-funded projects that we might be attributable to, I think having somebody that knows what CIRMA is and what it does, and knows what DEEP is and what it does, and knowing who those people are. I'm thinking that it's probably 70% of their time is spent here, and 30 or 35% of their time is spent in the Hartford networks trying to make sure that we're staying apprised, so then they can come back and recommend to the Board of Selectmen, we should probably get a grant application written for this thing, or we should
Yeah.
probably pursue this avenue to support things. But
And
my
it would-
concern is that, like, next
Yeah.
election, all three of us could be out. So you have three people who know
True.
none of how government works.
And there's
That's a
another,
problem.
there's another factor that you're bringing to my mind. Having been through a number of meetings at CCM, and then again at COST, which is a small, it's a council of small
Towns.
small towns, what you see is that those who are town managers have a better understanding, and the continuity is there from year to year, and you don't have the danger of disruption, and they're more apt to be able to acquire the grants as necessary because they know what to ask for and they know who to go to, and in addition to that, they become very credible on those boards, and
They
change
do, and
can be made.
Yeah.
Change it's
Absolutely.
more effective that
I
way.
agree.
I think those towns, like, I can name one, I think it's Tolland that has a town manager, and it might be Coventry. They're very strong administrators in those towns,
Yes.
and they're more stable financially and everything else. So I could see that. I really kind of like that.
I do want to follow up on your comment, Tim. That's the reason we asked the Charter Commission to take a look at this, because of the continuity aspect. Kathy and I are getting older, okay?
So am I.
Me too.
The point I'm trying to make here is that we're making a lot of changes here. We support the town. We have good decision-making for nonpartisan reasons. And I just want to make certain those kinds of good works continue. Now, you have a good point about all of us could be thrown out in the next election cycle. I hope that's not the case. And I hope if that is the case, somebody that steps up that has the competency, I think that this board has, paying compliments to everybody here. And so that was the whole objective. But based upon my experience in business, and I think Kathy will share this with me, and perhaps you will too, Tim, is that laying an organization, in my opinion, is not effective. It retards decision making. It indicates inefficiencies. And I've always believed in a flat organization chart, which we have here. That works fine if you have good, competent people, which I feel we have, which has enabled us to get the grants that we've got. It's enabled me, for example, in this position to reach out politically, and we've done that. Concern is the future, so maybe now's not the time, I guess, for a town manager.
I would agree that what Tim said is at least worth bringing forth to the public. They can make the decision, but I would recommend it at this time.
Recommend what?
Recommend that there be an elected board of selectmen who would be responsible for policy and hiring and firing. There may be other needs in there too, but those are the two I can think of at this
Kathy,
very
that's already
moment.
the case. I mean,
Yeah, that is the case right now, but to bring in a town manager to oversee all the operations and be able to spend 30 to 35% of his time
CEO.
in the political arena in Hartford.
Are you recommending that we have a town manager?
I'm suggesting we call it a chief administrator because I think that's a good recommendation they made. I would call it a chief
Yeah,
chief
I like
administrator.
that.
I would go with that. I would see it, the town will vote
So
whether they want
what you're
it or
saying
not.
is that you change the title of first selectman to chief.
No.
No, we're saying that it's a full-time paid chief administrator. So that's somebody that gets hired from the outside. This board becomes a
What
three-member
were their
board.
exact words anyways? Was it chief executive officer, like CEO, or?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I
no,
thought it
I
was chief
apologize. You're right,
administrator.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Their term was
You're
chief
right.
administrator,
Yeah,
which I like
okay.
better than town manager, because the
Right.
chief administrator is not going to set policy.
Right.
And they're not gonna have the ability to hire and fire where I think a town manager might. That
That's true.
responsibility stays with this board. This board becomes stays a three-member board. In my opinion, we asked the Charter Revision Commission to consider this. We stay a three-member board. No more salary for the first selectman. That would be used to pay the town administrator.
Right.
And then this board, after the next election, elects its chairman, just like the Board of Ed does
Yeah,
right now.
I like
Board
that.
of Ed is 9 members?
So it parallels
Yeah.
what the Board of Ed does now.
I like that.
Right.
They
so-
oversee the they oversee the superintendent,
That's all they do. Their job
they-
is policy
they
and
evaluate
superintendent.
them.
Right.
Yep.
So I
And
just
then-
want to make sure I understand this. You're talking about, for want of a better term, not a town manager, but a chief administrator. You're
That's
talking about
correct.
a 3-member board of selectmen, not a first selectman.
Correct.
3-member board of selectmen
With a chairperson, yes.
with a chairperson that rotates.
No,
No.
the 3 vote in the chair.
The three elected selectmen,
Select, let's say, one of us if we were a part of that.
let's say the 3 of us get reelected next
Okay.
election. And Kathy nominates you for chairman and I second the nomination, we vote, now you're chairman of the board of selectmen.
Mhm.
So
You're the
we
first
will,
select-
we will meet with the
Town
chief administrator and discuss policy, hiring, firing.
Mhm.
The official voice of the board is that chairperson. So when it comes time to do a one-on-one with the town administrator with an annual review, when we get into
The finance.
any finances, the responsibility stays with the chairperson of the board to make sure the rest of the board gets it.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same way the school board runs.
Yeah.
But there's nobody on that school board today that would be qualified to be a superintendent of schools for a district of 16 or 1,800 students. So they went out and found a guy that has that capacity, has that training. We're gonna do the same thing here. This board is then charged to go find that administrator who can run the halls of Hartford, implement the policy that we have decided,
Mhm.
and make sure town staff here understands it.
Right.
But if town staff has a problem, they don't come to you, man. They come to
Right.
the administrator.
Yeah, right.
If town
So-
people have a
so
problem,
we're gonna eliminate- we're gonna
voters have a
eliminate-
problem, they come to us as the elected
Sorry.
body.
Okay.
I
So-
think-
But they can still come here, because you know they're going to.
So we're going to eliminate.
Okay.
Can I just add one more thing?
Because they're
though?
going to come see me.
I believe that in addition to policy and hiring and firing, we need to have financial oversight to the point of, to make certain that the spending is in agreement with what the town has
We do
voted
that now.
upon.
We do that now.
That wouldn't change.
Yeah. So
Nothing's
that's, but
changed.
that's
No, but
not policy.
I think that needs to be in there, so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Policy, hiring and firing,
And
Budgetary.
financial oversight.
Yeah, financial oversight.
So that we are there for budget preparation.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're there to make sure that it's where it should be.
So I'm just trying to simplify this in my own mind. Nothing's going to change, with the
Correct.
exception of the title, okay? Eliminate the first selectman position. The same mandate that the Board of Selectmen has is still there, expanded somewhat, okay? We're taking the position of first selectman, making it a chief administrator.
Not-
That's not elected,
No,
that's
no.
appointed.
There'd be an additional body sitting in this room
Right.
today.
That's
I
elected.
understand.
A hired, no,
That's
there'd
right.
be a hired
Right.
chief
Right.
administrator explaining to the three of us whatever is going on.
So
Right.
can I ask something?
Sure.
So
I
you
just
know,
wanna make sure his question's
Yeah.
answered
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. Is it answered?
Is that answered or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is, so say it's budget time, you know, how we have difficulties always getting people in here and so forth, and, you know, they present their budget to the town administrator, and then he compiles all the information from each director, and then sets up a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and presents the entire budget.
Mhm.
Okay. I just want to make that clear because,
Yeah,
like,
then-
because that solves like a lot of scheduling issues.
Yeah.
Well, it
too,
solves a lot of those,
for-
because that administrator
because-
can do it from day to day here and not wait
Right.
on our schedule.
Right.
However, if this board, if, let's say it was the three of us on this board,
Right.
okay, and there were questions,
Mhm.
if the administrator can't answer them,
Mhm.
then there may be a necessity for one of the.
Well, I'm just asking for,
Directors
because
to
of
come
what we went
forward.
through with the transfer station and, you know, all the open meetings, like you said, that we have,
Mhm.
you know, do we still want to do that?
Oh, yeah, those.
That's what I guess I'm getting at.
Yes,
Is like, because
because-
it's an open meeting, whereas it wouldn't be an open meting with, say, Mike came in to do his budget with the administrator. That would not be an
That's-
open meeting.
The open meetings.
So I guess
with the
that's what I'm-
elected.
The open
talking.
meetings with the elect, so
That's
let's
what
go,
I'm
let's go
asking.
through your scenario. So
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, right?
chief administrator meets with Mike, meets with Todd, meets
Right.
with John,
Yeah.
everybody's budgets come together,
Yeah.
they make a recommendation to us and we say, okay, let's go forward.
Okay.
So now we get to the public hearings.
Okay.
The elected board needs to sit there with the town
Town
administrator.
administrator,
Town
okay.
administrator says, here's what I
Okay.
propose.
Okay.
These guys agree.
Yeah.
And we're all going, yep.
Just like the
But-
board of
Okay,
Ed.
I just
now-
was making, I
right,
just
but now-
kind of, you know what I mean?
You leave that meeting and tomorrow morning somebody's got a question and they know me.
Yeah.
They can call me and say,
Yeah.
hey, I really don't like what the chief
Yeah.
administrator said on that, and
Okay.
can you get me some clarification?
Okay.
So voters still have direct access to the
Okay.
people who are running the town,
Yeah.
because ultimately, we're not abdicating accountability.
Yeah.
All we're doing is abdicating the day-to-day to
Okay.
somebody who's got the HR
Yeah.
skills to handle all the
Right,
stuff
no, I
that
get
goes on
that.
here,
I just
but
was
also knows
worried
how to go
about
to
that
Hartford Post.
other
Yeah.
part, that other piece where.
And I think,
That's
You know
up
what
to
I'm
the
saying,
administrator
yeah.
to get it done.
and I
Yeah.
think
Not up to us.
the biggest,
Okay. All right, that's
learning
good.
curve I think we'd all have is
I
that.
shouldn't say us.
No, I know. what you mean.
I think the biggest learning curve that we'd all have is that people that were used to the way it's always been done now have this
Yeah.
other
yeah.
personality to deal with,
Yeah,
positive or
that's okay.
minus.
No,
I
I
have
think
no
it's going to
problem
be.
with that.
I think it's going to be positive.
So my suggestion
I
would
really
be that we
do.
send that back to Charter Rev and say,
I think it's a
Like
really
what
good
you said.
suggestion. I
The
don't
other
care what I
aspect-
think.
The other aspect which will come up, and that is, I'd say we accept your recommendation, or accept the board's charter commission's recommendation with some caveats to it, is that we will maintain the 3-member board of selectmen,
Mhm.
or potentially hire a chief administrator. The question is going to become, what's that compensation level going to be, given the fact that you want somebody in here with the kind of skill levels necessary to do the kind of job that
It's-
we have? Which in my opinion,
Yep.
based upon my experience in government, you're not going to find somebody who can take a job like that without some sort of increase in compensation over and above, let's say, what the first selectman's
no,
paying.
I think the expense to the town is probably going to be in the $40,000 to $45,000.
That's the number I came up with. If you take a look at the stipend for 3.
And you always give a range too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always,
But I think by the
negotiations.
time you get done paying a chief administrator what you're going to have to pay him,
Yeah.
and adjust the stipend for the first selectman, we're
Yeah.
probably looking at a $40,000 to $45,000
I think so,
increase
too.
to the town.
That's
However,
the number I came up with, because I don't think you're going to be able to track somebody, the kind
Oh, gosh,
of
no.
position
No.
to run a $30 or $35 million company
Yeah.
for less than $125,000 or $140,000.
correct. But I think that gets offset by the fact that we are on top of grant applications and other things that might
Mhm.
benefit the town of Summers.
Yeah.
Plus, we get the continuity that lessens the chance of having rotation with our director level and next level down of people that may or may not like a new administration that comes in and changes the way things happen. So I think we gain longevity with directors who we know can do their jobs well.
Yeah.
Because they'll be able to form relationships with somebody who's here beyond an election cycle and chase some cash. Kind of like what you did with with bringing the prison folks in to
Yeah.
talk about an alternative route.
Right.
That's great, we did it. How do we have somebody whose job it is to make sure that gets done all the
Yeah.
time by process rather than by...
I think one of Andy Rocket's comments that he received from the people that he talked to is that the people here, the citizens of Summers, wanted to have a say in terms of how elected officials are, who they are. Which
Well, they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should not change, yeah, they
That's
still
correct.
have access. The only thing we're doing is building some
So,
continuity. in.
which brings up
It's
another
building
point.
continuity at this level for the day-to-day operations. The fact is, there are some people in here, every time there's an election, they don't even know what their fate is. But
Correct.
they will, when they work for a town manager, these directors are doing their jobs, as are all the people in here. But it's someone with experience who can go out to do what needs to be done to develop more for the town. But at the same point, the Board of Selectmen are they're there to hear the public, they're there to direct the administrator, or whatever we want to call that person,
Mhm.
because those who are elected have to respond to the electorate.
Yeah, I was on the board when we hired a superintendent that was not good at his job and had to make that change. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you.
You know, you bring up a good point, and that point is that I deal with these directors every day. I have to support them, as I've said publicly. But their concern is what happens down the road.
Sure.
How would you like to be in a position as a director, in a responsible position in this company, this organization, and have to retrain somebody else, or not knowing what that managerial skill level is going to be, or how they're going to interact with them?
Or having
That's-
having a personality conflict that's
Correct.
not a documented event for separation, and then you open up yourself to litigation.
Yeah,
So
it's very disconcerting, and it's very scary. I've had people tell me that, so that was the reason we asked the Charter Commission to take a look at this.
Yep.
So, Ken,
So I'd like to make a motion then that tries to encapsulate what I think we've just been talking about for the last 40 minutes or so, if everybody's ready. I'd make a motion that the Board of Selectmen reply to the Charter Revision Commission with the following. that the Board of Selectmen fully support the recommendation relative to the town clerk, and I'll email this to you, Kim.
Oh, good, thank you.
That the Board of Selectmen recommends that the Charter Revision Commission revisit a recommendation that the town move to a full-time chief administrator as chief executive, reporting to a 3-member elected Board of Selectmen primarily responsible for policy, hiring and firing, and financial oversight. And that the Board of Selectmen fully support the recommendations relative to the combination of planning and zoning commissions. And finally, that the Board of Selectmen fully support the recommendations relative to the number of members on the planning and zoning commissions.
Love
Okay.
Second.
it.
Any further discussion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Awesome. Good job, guys.
So move to adjourn?
Well, we have to draft this, you wanna do this, Tim? Since you're the one that's,
I think,
It
I
should
think,
be
isn't
signed
the
by all three
motion
of us.
good
I think,
enough?
does the
I
motion?
think the motion's good enough.
okay.
I think the motion, because it's vote,
It'll be part of the
it's
minutes.
to act and to vote.
And then I guess the only other thing I would ask is that we get advice from the town clerk as to whether or not we need to do anything next Thursday to
Do you want to
keep
bring
this
her
on
in?
track. Yeah, would you do
Oh,
that?
sure.
That
Hold
would
on
be great.
just a moment.
In
So
the
what-
meantime, I'll email this to you.
So
Okay,
we're
thank
gonna
you.
have to go to the, in November for a referendum, right?
Yeah, we want it on the November ballot.
Right.
Yep.
Which in effect is what you recommended, what we agreed, just agreed to, plus,
There's a bug in here. Just, that fly is just annoying.
Oh, I thought you meant the room was bugged.
Oh, no.
The Russian interference in our election.
Fly.
Oh, that is weird now.
What's weird?
I'm watching the
Because it's like
video
20
and
seconds
she's,
behind.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
she's getting ready with the phone,
That's the live
and she's
stream,
right
right?
behind me.
That
It's like,
hap-
what are you doing?
That
I
happened to
freaked-
me when I was watching last week from wherever I was in Sioux
Yeah.
Falls, and it was funny because I was on the phone,
Yeah.
but I was watching things happening 30 seconds
Sorry.
before.
Right.
30
That's
seconds
the way it
after they
goes.
had
When
it,
you
so.
say live, I expected live.
Well, yeah.
We got the buzzer in case we say bad things.
Yeah.
It'd be like the Watergate tapes and just make some of it
Well-
go away.
No, it's on. It was still.
and you're aware about what our recommendations are. Tim, you wanna
Yeah,
read?
I was just trying to confirm that with Kim, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question was, is there any, we're going to send this motion back to the Charter Revision Commission as our response to their recommendation.
Correct.
And my question is, do we need to do anything else as our Board of Selectmen?
At this point in time, no. The
Okay.
recommendation is sent to them. They have an additional 15 days to review your recommendations based on your public hearing and their draft report. And they can come back with yay, nay, or we don't want to change, our recommendation is final.
But they're strictly advisory.
Mhm.
So in this case, if they come back and we don't agree with what they've come back with, then,
But you can't change it. Right.
What do you mean you can't change it?
Well, you can't change it to what you want. It's based on their report. If they
wait a minute.
if they disagree with what you are recommending,
Yes,
they do not have to agree with it.
right,
And they will come back with the report as presented,
right.
okay?
But does that go to the vote?
And
Yeah.
that's it. That's the final. You don't have another chance to change it.
Wait a minute.
I thought you did. I didn't
No.
know. I don't know.
So whatever we have just recommended, if they don't agree with,
Their
Your
report, it's
goes
like,
to the voters.
yes. If they do not want to agree or modify their recommendation, that's it.
Okay.
You don't have another shot at it. This is it.
If that's the rule, that's the rule.
And it's up to the voters to decide.
And then it will be up to the board to decide also whether or not you're going to do it as a one question
See, that's
or a
what
four
my-
question too. Traditionally, from the charter revision, we did it as a one question.
Yeah.
all the factors? in
All the
one?
factors.
So if
And
it
the
was
question
like yes or
was,
no, or something like
do
that.
you agree with the recommendations of the Charter Revision Commission? That's it.
A final recommendation.
But you don't have to combine them.
You don't have to. It's up to you.
I would
Yeah,
do
and-
it.
Just be cognizant, though, that Mike Finance is looking at a bonding question, which may be two questions or one question. And
But we
if
haven't
you-
we haven't voted on that yet, and that's
No.
not on the agenda, so I don't want to talk about that
Well,
today.
no, I'm thinking of the design
Number
of the
questions on
ballot,
the
Yeah.
ballot.
Yep.
because you reach a certain point, then they have to go down the side, and that is a very complicated ballot.
Yeah, I think to talk about that this afternoon is in advance of what we are trying to accomplish today, and that is get a response back
Oh, yeah.
to the commission. And I think, we're 3 out of 4 we're spot on with. It's the second one that we'd like them to revisit. But based on what you're saying, if they don't like what we've recommended, they
They
can go
don't-
forward with theirs anyway,
right.
and off you go.
Exactly.
That's fair enough. I mean, it's good dialogue, and that's what we wanted. It doesn't change.
So we can't even eliminate one of those either.
But again, you're going to have to, at a later date, decide, are you doing one question
Right.
or
Or 4
multiple questions, individually or as one?
And we can do that at a regular meeting after we hear back from the board of,
Okay.
from
Yeah.
the advisory commission, right?
As long as it's before August 29th or something like that?
Yeah, when do you need the ballot questions finished?
The first week in September, I think it's like the 2nd of September, I have to have it to the Secretary of State.
So we've got a meeting on the 9th, and we've got a
Yeah.
meeting on the 23rd,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So if we got those to you as a result of the meeting of the 23rd, we're,
Well, I have to get the commission to decide when all of them can get together.
how
And
many
they're-
days do they have?
They have 15. So they have to get together ASAP too.
Okay. Far out.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Ann.
See, I was confused. I thought that they were strictly advisory to us, and whatever we decided
Well, I thought that's what Ann
is what
said,
goes
but
on the
We
ballot,
can,
but apparently
we,
that's not the
we can
case.
double check that before the 9th, just to make sure when we have our regular meeting that we've got the right information to go
Right.
forward with. But it doesn't change what is in the motion that we voted on, so
Right.
we'll send. we'll
Excuse
send
me,
those.
I apologize. They have 30 days. You had the 15.
Right.
They have 30.
Okay.
whoa.
That's
Okay.
a lot. That's a lot of time. Why do they get
So
more
if they
time?
accept our recommendation, that's fine, but if they come back with something other than what we recommended based upon the original recommendation, that's what goes to the.
Well, hopefully they'll watch what we discussed on that issue and
Yeah.
use that as they
I
deliberate.
think it's a good compromise,
I think so,
personally.
too.
But let's see.
Well, I think their recommendation was strong, that the town's probably not ready for a town manager, and also that the voters absolutely need to have access to the
Yeah.
people responsible, and I think what we've sent back in our response hits both of those.
Yeah, what I had a problem
I
with
think.
is a part-time so-called first selectman they recommended. To have somebody come in, with a.
That confuses things.
It is.
And that,
You'd have trouble finding somebody like that would take that responsibility.
well, not only that, I think that information could only come from you having sat in that seat.
Yeah.
And they didn't sit in that seat, so they don't know how complex
Yeah.
that job is every day.
Right.
So hopefully they'll take that under consideration and advisement and move forward. Alrighty. Motion
Okay.
to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Splendid afternoon. And that motion should be in your inbox.
So, August 15th is we're taking a selfie at Town Hall. So if you
I
want to
will be
stop
on the
by.
Cape.
That's okay.
You want it like a?
You can send something to me.
Do you want like a flat picture of me to hold up on a stick?
CCM goes around on
I
August
saw
15th
that.
and does like a selfie. So I'm just gonna. It's just something for the newsletter and stuff like that. So.
And Chris is responsible. It looks like he's going to try to bring some kids in.
Yeah, well,
That'd be
he's
great.
got camp going on,
Yep.
so I want to bring her down to the camp where everybody, I want them to see what we do. People need to see this stuff. So
Yeah,
it's going to be
absolutely.
really great. So, and I sent another email about the newsletter. What I was thinking for Jan Ellis of Wiki Good News. If you have any ideas, I sent something. Just you guys are in favor. Help support us, the town, to get the information out there.
Yeah.
To every household.
Yeah, I'll
It's
send
really
it out.
important. If you have any ideas.
Speaking
I
of that,
do
the
have one idea.
concert tonight is at Joanna's.
I don't know.
So-
I haven't heard.
I don't get notifications on the app anymore. I don't know if the app is broken or if
Unless
we
she's
haven't
not
been
doing it. I did it
Okay.
2 weeks ago when they had
They were they were somewhere
Just truck
last week. They
truck
weren't
stops,
here.
troubadours, is that what it is?
whatever the
I'm not sure who it is,
the
but it-
green what was it, the green the blue sky people.
Yep.
I sent
But
that one out.
Okay, because I haven't been getting them.
Did you get that one?
No.
Oh,
That's
I
what I'm
I
didn't.
saying,
sent
I'm
that
not
one
getting
out
So I'll
because
check,
Ian
I'll
wasn't
check my
here and I was like,
notifications and make
shit,
sure.
Ian's not here. I gotta
Okay.
do this stuff. So,
So
That's interesting. Okay.
So my suggestion would be talk
Yep.
to economic development, because Rick Rotaco's been doing.
I talked to Vicki Clark. I was at a party, and I just happened to talk to her about it, and I says, "Oh, you and Tom should sponsor us for a year." You know, and she's looking at me going, "How much is that?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, you are on economic development, and I would love to have you guys sponsor us, because I'm gonna put this page is sponsored by Tom and Vicki Clark, and you know, blah blah blah, and give you some, you know,
Sure,
more."
yeah.
And she's looking at me. She goes, "This is blackmail. You're black." And it was funny. It was really funny. I'm like, "No, but like, I want you guys to be a part of this."
But
I
the
mean,
coverage, it goes to every
well,
household
that's what I
in town.
mean, you know. And I'm so anybody that comes in that owns a business, I've been kind of giving them a heads up. So
Good though.
I'm talking about that. I know that Rick Rotaco's been working on a website for economic development.
Mhm.
I think it should be merged into this newsletter.
Well, the newsletter is going to be electronic as well, so we'll have that on our website in addition to going to every household. So I'm so excited about it.
Good.
Yeah, and we're going to get some local talent to do the photography on the front, and you know, and what's his name? Neil Connell's going to be doing some artwork for
Right.
like a town seal kind of thing.
He's the artist that has his paintings here.
Yeah,
in town hall.
he's wonderful.
That
He
looks
does.
great.
Yeah. So.
It's all good.
I think it's gonna be good. And then like recreation's gonna put like 10 pages in it, so.
Good.
Is the camera still on?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Sorry. I forgot.
Hi, everybody.
I
How
get
y'all doing?
excited about this
That's
stuff.
all good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. very
Bye, y'all.
much.